Pre-season is underway for the 20 Premier League teams, meaning rough training sessions, new faces and lengthy trips abroad. But where will each team be heading on tour this summer? Arsenal, USA and Spain. The Gunners are heading stateside for their pre-season tour, taking part in the International Champions Cup against Bayern Munich, Fiorentina and Real Madrid, plus a friendly against Colorado Rapids on July 16th to kick off the tour. Then they've got the annual Emirates Cup back at home, before another really tough friendly, heading to the Nou Camp to take on Barcelona 1 week before the Premier League season kicks off. So Unai Emery's men will be tested against both sides of the El Clasico derby. It doesn't get much tougher than that. Aston Villa, USA and Germany. Back in the top flight, Villa are also off to America, but for more of a training camp than a tournament. Getting put through their paces in the blistering heat, Villa will have one game out there before heading back to England for a string of games against lower league opposition. Their toughest task sees them head abroad again, taking on RB Leipzig 1 week before the Premier League starts, and that'll be a great marker for Dean Smith's men. Bournemouth, Spain. The Cherries are staying in Europe, heading to La Manga, which is a top-class facility often used by the best clubs. While they're out in Spain, Bournemouth have got 2 friendlies planned, and then when they return they've got the privilege of welcoming Lyon and Lazio to Dean Court. And that's great, but it still doesn't top the time Real Madrid show up on the south coast. Brighton, Austria. Graham Potter's side are currently out in Austria as he begins preparations for his first ever season as a Premier League manager, and that's probably a nice place to go. It's not a big commercial tour that's all about the money, it's just about warm weather training. Keep it simple Brighton, keep it simple. Burnley, Portugal. Sean Dyche will be buzzing to have a normal pre-season after the Europa League distractions last summer, and to celebrate he's taking the lads to the Algarve. It just appears to be a training camp with no fixtures lined up before they return to big away journeys to Fleetwood Town and Wigan Athletic. Chelsea, Ireland, Japan, Austria and Germany. Now this is a proper commercial pre-season tour. It's an easy start with the trip to Ireland, then they head to Japan, which is sadly what you get when you're sponsored by a big Japanese tyre company. Then before the season kicks off, they've got games in Austria and Germany, ensuring the players rack up plenty of air miles before they head to Old Trafford on August 11th. Crystal Palace, Switzerland. The Eagles aren't heading too far for their pre-season exploits, with Roy Hodgson taking the lads to Switzerland, a place that he knows well from earlier in his career. Palace will play 2 games now in Switzerland, while the rest of the time will be spent yodeling and eating Toblerone because stereotypes. Everton, Kenya, Switzerland and Germany. Everton have already had a game overseas, playing out in Kenya the other day in front of a packed out stadium. More fans were there than there were at the Europa League final, just think about that. Once Marco Silva's men return from Africa, their next stop is Switzerland for 2 games, before ending the summer with the Opel Cup in Germany, plus another friendly out there with Werder Bremen. It's a busy summer for Everton. Leicester City, France. Brendan Rodgers is doing a bit of a low-key pre-season with Leicester, who looks to be playing all of their games on British shores, with their one big test coming against Champions League bound Atlanta. But the Fockers will be able to experience the sun, heading to France for some seriously warm weather training. Liverpool, USA, Scotland and Switzerland. The European champions are dotting about a few places this summer, spending a lot of their time in the United States. They've got games against Dortmund, Sporting and Sevilla in America, with 2 of those games taking place at baseball grounds. Then they face Napoli at Murrayfield in Edinburgh, before a final game in Switzerland against Lyon. Then they'll start their season a week earlier due to competing in the Community Shield. Manchester City, China, Hong Kong and Japan. And it's City who the Reds will be playing in the Community Shield final, and the Premier League winners will be preparing out in Asia. First they've got the Premier League Asia Trophy alongside 3 other top flight teams out in China, then after that they face Kitchi at the Hong Kong Stadium. Their final stop is Japan, where they take on Yokohama on July 27th. It's a lot of travelling for City, but no real top quality opposition. Manchester United, Australia, Singapore, China, Norway and Wales. The Red Devils are also heading east, but had to go one better by heading to Australia as well, not that it went down well with Paul Pogba and Jesse Lingard. They've got an odd game against rivals Leeds while they're out there, then it's on to the International Champions Cup where they face Inter Milan and Spurs. After they return from Asia, it's a trip to Solskjaer's homeland of Norway, and then they wrap things up with another International Champions Cup game against AC Milan, this time with a much shorter journey to Wales. Newcastle United, China and Scotland. With no manager and a club in disarray, Newcastle are heading rapidly to his new home of China to take part in the Premier League Asia Trophy along with Man City and 2 other clubs. After that they've got a wee trip to Scotland to face Hibs, and there's no guarantee that Newcastle will be out of this mess by the time the season starts. Norwich City, Germany. The German manager is taking his team to Germany, what a shock. The Canaries will be playing 2 games in Germany, including a very tough affair against Bundesliga giants Schalke on July 19th. After that the Canaries are back on English shores, with 2 friendlies at Carrow Road against Atlanta and Toulouse, who again will prove to be tough opposition. Sheffield United, Portugal. The Blades aren't going too far afield, heading to the Algarve for just one pre-season game, where they'll take on La Liga side Real Betis. Chris Wilder's men will soak up the Portuguese sun before return to England, where they face 4 different lower league opposition away from home. Southampton, Austria, Holland and Ireland. Ralph Hasenhüttl's heading home for pre-season, taking the Saints to Austria for a training camp and one friendly game. After that they've got a game in Holland against Feyenoord, ending the summer with a training camp in Dublin, while some of the players will actually have to go to China where a Saints 11 will take on Guangzhou RNF. But right now it's unclear how many first team players will actually be involved. Tottenham, Singapore, China and Germany. Spurs will also be taking part in the International Champions Cup, which sees them travel all over the place to play some of the best around. First is Juventus in Singapore, then Man United in Shanghai, before they head to Germany for the Audi Cup, where they'll play Real Madrid plus another team. Then before the season starts it's back at the International Champions Cup, but they're actually at home to Inter Milan this time, so it's not too bad. Watford, Austria. Yet another Premier League team are heading to Austria. I had no idea it was this popular. They play Ajax and Bayer Leverkusen out there, which should be great games even if they are just friendlies. West Ham, China and Switzerland. The Hammers are part of the Premier League Asia Trophy, starting the competition against Manchester City. How easy. But before that they're actually heading to Switzerland to face Al-Tak. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but I don't know any better. When they return from China they've got the Betway Cup, but that's taking place at the London Stadium. And finally Wolves, China. Nuno's men are the 4th and final team in the Premier League Asia Trophy, taking on Newcastle on July 17th. That plus one more game in China is all they've got booked though, as their Europa League journey starts at the end of July, making it a very short pre-season for Wolves, who hopefully won't suffer a European hangover. So that's where every Premier League club is heading on pre-season tour this summer. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching and don't forget to like, share and subscribe.